Thank you for joining me. I'm Scott Ryan. So the Liberals are a little bit upset today because of Glenn Beck and his art, in which he put together a piece that he called Obama in PP, where it was sort of a spoof on the notorious crucifix in a jar of urine that was on display, I believe, in New York in a prominent museum at one time. So he came up with something to test the liberal integrity and purism, and whether they would apply their standards of free speech to conservatives. So he came up with Obama in PP, in which he took an Obama bobblehead doll and put it in a jar of urine and listed it on eBay. Now, ostensibly it was a jar of urine. I believe it was actually fake, but eBay forced them to take it down, or they took it down, because they do not allow the sale of body parts and things derived from the human body on their site. But the sanctimonious liberals are crying about how we should respect the office of the presidency. That old platitude where you say that no matter who is in there, you have to respect the office of the presidency. That is a crock of crap. I don't respect the office of the presidency any more than I respect my homeowners association more than I respect the office of the United States government, the presidency of the United States government. I have no obligation to. Our founding fathers were not establishing a monarchy. This federal government was a necessary evil, and it took a great deal of persuasion and a great deal of promises and the Bill of Rights to convince the other states to go along and ratify it. The only way I'm going to respect the president is if they do something to warrant my respect. And the last president in there that warranted my respect was Ronald Reagan. When you go in there and you take the office of the presidency, you're elected there by a bunch of degenerates who couldn't tell you the three branches of government, who don't even know who in the hell the vice president is, or how many congressmen there are. I'm sorry. That to me is an illegitimate president. And when that so-called president assaults every value upon which this country was founded, when he daily assaults our Constitution, when he assaults our military constantly, trying to make it into a politically correct social experiment, everything that he does, when it undermines the nation and the Bill of Rights, when he defecates on our Constitution, I am not going to respect the office. I don't care what liberals are crying. I have no obligation to kiss that man's sorry ass because some idiots, some ignorant degenerates who don't even know what it means to be American, elected him. So you can pretty much put that in your pipe and smoke it. For the first 150 years of this country, the power of the federal government was the weakest. And the founding fathers made it that way. The most prestigious government, the most powerful government, and the government that took the majority of all the total tax take were the local governments. The power was always at the base. The local government was supposed to be the most powerful government, followed by the states, and last was the federal. The federal government, for the first 47 years of this country's existence, the federal government took the least amount of tax dollars. That's the way our founding fathers intended it. That's the way it was until a bunch of degenerates called the baby boom came in and totally turned it upside down to where the federal government is now the biggest taker, followed by the states and the local. Turned it upside down, and then they spawned children whom they allowed the government to raise, being narcissists They refuse to raise them themselves. Not that they would have done any better than the government, many of them. But it's getting worse and worse and worse every day. We're taught that we're supposed to have this reverence, this veneration for the office of the presidency. Based on what? We should be venerating. It should be the opposite, actually. If the Founding Fathers' intent were actually being followed, instead of this ass-backwards method where our great stars of government start out in the local office and work their way up and then run for state legislature and then eventually, when they hit the big time, hit the federal government. If we had any idea of what our founders and the people who lived in this country the first 147 years had intended, we would be starting out. We would start out running for Congress, the U.S. Congress. We would start out running for the U.S. Senate. And then we would run for the state, and then we'd run for the local. Ultimately, once we reached the point where we were qualified to serve in our local governments. That's really the way it was intended. It's ass backwards. And this notion that I'm supposed to revere Barack Obama, this ignorant fool, this Manchurian candidate, suckered a bunch of people after serving a couple years in, well, I think he might have served a full 2 years in a state legislature, and then as soon as he won his Senate seat, he was running for president. So I'm supposed to venerate this idiot based on that? That's the only thing he ever accomplished aside from undermining our Constitution. Sorry. I'll tell you how much respect I have for this guy. It makes me think of Joe Pesci's character in Goodfellas. Go get my shine box. You freaking shine my shoes. You're a public servant. You're not a monarch. You're not an aristocrat. You are there to serve, and you are there to serve in the weakest, what was intended to be the weakest form of government in this nation. The most incapable, what was supposed to be the least powerful, what was supposed to take the least amount of tax dollars. That's what you serve in. And I'm following the Founding Fathers' lead in that, their original intent. You go get your freaking shine box. You spit shine my shoes, Obama. That's what you're worthy of. When you do something worthwhile that's worthy of respect, then you'll get it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Scott Ryan.